Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do something a bit old school. So I have some mirror cardstock and a card base, some alcohol blending solution and my alcohol inks. That's not the old school bit, but we'll get there. An MFT All About You stamp set just for the sentiment. And this is the old school bit. I'm going to take you back to when did I start this? About 13 years ago. And I'm gonna try and make it a bit more modern, but it probably won't be that modern. But it was fun to go back to a really old school kind of way of crafting. And basically this is decoupage. It's not true decoupage, which is I believe a French technique, which is very flat. This is going to create a lot of dimension. So what I've used is a Popcorn the Bear Crafter's Companion CD and printed onto some light cardstock. I think this light cardstock happens to be Crafter's Companion cardstock as well. It's like printable cardstock. It's really quite nice. And I am just going to ink around the edges of each piece. I had to manually hand cut this. It was painful, which is probably why I don't do decoupage that often anymore, and haven't done for a long time. But I tried to run it through my scan and cut to see if it would pick up enough of the images, and it even wanted to cut out this section in the middle here. It was able to pick up to be able to cut that out, but it kept missing a lot of the other places, and I think it's because it's quite a soft color palette on this, so it couldn't quite define the lines between things. So in the end I just decided to hand cut it, which, like I say, was quite painful for me. Physically painful, so that's why I don't do this that often. And I tend to use a die cutting, die or a scan and cut. So on the mirror cardstock, it just it was too bright for me. It was too shiny, and so I want to use some alcohol inks to try and make that sort of more muted and a bit more dull, but still have that shine. So I'm going to use I start off with a combo of a alcohol pearl in smolder and then an alcohol ink in slate, and you'll see in a second it doesn't totally cover very much, but I take the pearls you have to shake really well, so this is me just shaking, and then I'm just dropping a couple of drops onto a little, it's like a felt pad. This is the original applicator. I believe there's a round one now as well, and then the same with the slate, which is the normal one, and then a bit of alcohol blending solution. In hindsight I probably didn't need the solution, but the solution helps it move a bit more, and you can see there's not a lot happening, not very much at all actually. So I go back in with the slate thinking, well, if it's a darker color I will grab that and put that on there, and it starts to build up a bit of color, because that's the nice thing about the alcohol inks, is that they start to build and layer as you go, and each time you go in it will move the alcohol that's already there, the ink that's already there. But again, it was still not dark enough for me, so I grabbed some denim, which is like a dark blue, because I have a dark blue or a blue base card. I thought the blue would then tie in, and that was much better. I was much happier. You can see the massive difference it makes. I only need the edges. Excuse me. I only need the edges, so that worked just fine for me, and I was really happy with that. And you'll see it's just a slight coloring there, but not anything too major. And then, as you would have seen, I also inked the edges with some distress ink of all the layers, again just to give it a bit of depth, even though this is going to be very dimensional. And then to clean the surface of the alcohol ink, I used some hand sanitizer in the gel form, and it's a Tim Holtz tip. If you use the gel one, it doesn't dry out as quickly as the normal rubbing alcohol, and that way you can clean your surface and get it cleaned before it starts to evaporate. So it's a good hint and a good tip, and it works really well. So I'm going to use some, this is the super sticky tape that I've found on Amazon, and it's actually really good. It's an acid free, and so I'm quite chuffed with it. So because my mirror cardstock is quite it seems the whole pack seems to have just bowed, and I cannot get it flat. I've stuck it under my Gemini machine, which weighs a ton, and it will not flatten. So I want some strong tape on there. But I also realized that actually I needed to go around the edge of the card base, because I think I've said this before, if you start inking something, ink everything. It just makes a big difference to the whole card. So I inked just the front of it with the same brushed corduroy ink, and then I'm sticking the alcohol piece or mirrored piece onto the front. And I'm going to stick the base piece of the image flat onto the mirror cardstock now. And again, I'm just making sure I make sure there's enough adhesive on there. I probably do go overkill, but I still think I'd rather have more adhesive on there than not enough. I hate the idea of things falling off. So again, just lining this up in the center, and then you'll see there's just a slight border around where the alcohol inked mirror cardstock is, but it's not super shiny bright in your face. I didn't want that. So now you're going to watch me put like 10,000 foam dots on all these layers, and even a really skinny piece that I managed to I wasn't sure it was going to work, but I managed to get a skinny piece of foam adhesive that I can put along the top bar, which is where like the curtain rod is in the image, and it's this really thin section. So while I'm doing that, just a hint on when you're cutting things like decoupage sheets out and these images out. One is like he's very hairy, he's a bear, so I just, the obvious hairs that were sticking out, I cut around those, and you'll see a couple of them, but honestly you don't need to worry too much. It all kind of works really well together anyway in the end. The other thing is if there are any center sections, like between his legs, there's a few pieces that needed to be cut out, and then where the window is and the curtains are, I needed to cut that out as well. Oh, sorry, my cat's just a bit bombardy in here. Anyway, I would cut those first before you cut the outer edges. It's much easier to cut those center pieces out first before you try, or then to try and do that once you've cut around the outside of the image. There's less risk of sort of maybe tearing parts of it, especially that bit at the top where there's the curtain pole. So that's just a little tip for you guys. And I was a bit like hesitant, because I thought, oh god, am I going to get this on here right? You've gone to all this trouble to cut all this stuff out. Am I actually going to line it up properly? So apologies for my head, but it lines up super easy, and the cardstock, although thin, is actually sturdy enough that I could get in there pretty easily to line these things up. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So that, you could leave it at that layer. When you print them out, there's actually a really tiny little, like half the size of this one, of the same thing again, but just with two layers, the base layer and then one layer, sorry, of decoupage, and then you have this guy. And actually, even when hubby and I were looking at it, we thought that actually there's maybe even a piece where its head is. There might be a layer there that could have been added in, but this is what prints out, and then I cut it out, so it's all there for you. It's all, you don't have to work at what layer has to go with what layer, which layer you have to cut out to get the next one on. And then I took the MFT All About You stamp set, and it does have this, a big word U in the stamp, and it also has a 3 dies, which I think I showed you, I'm not sure, and I just used the little stamps for the words I miss you, because I feel like this little bear is definitely one of in that sort of frame of mind, and I'm definitely like that with my family at the moment. I'm going through some crud mentally, so I find that I felt like this was the right time to make a little card like this. So I do miss them dearly, all of them, and in particular Grandad as well, which, if you've been watching, you know a little bit about that. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. And then I've got it's a clay heart from Little Lucy's, or Lucy's Little Cards, Little Lucy's Cards. Anyway, she's local, and she has the most amazing like gems and things. You've seen them in a couple of videos, and I managed to find the right sort of shade of blue. So I just inked the edges of it as well with the distressing, just to dull it down a little bit more. But I thought the blue worked really well. The red wasn't quite right, and then the blue also ties in the blue card and everything else. So I just thought that that worked much better. But that's it. Super easy. What I would say though is maybe do your stamping before you layer all those layers on, because I had to use the corner of the stamp to do that. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you dig out your old school decoupage and give it a go. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.